All right, everybody, back with another one. Today I want to do a special episode. I want to do an episode where we discuss Christianity. I see a lot of people today are moving towards Christianity. I see a big revival, not just in America, but in the world. I see a lot of people that are um, being born again. There's mass baptisms across the country and in the world. There's a lot of Arab nations now that are having, Christian revivals, and there clearly is some sort of, you know, mass awakening to Christianity in the world. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who are um, you know, moving into other faiths. There are always people that are, joining other religions and becoming a part of those. There are people who are, joining cults and people who are and agnostic or atheistic, and that will always be the case. There will always be people who, just don't believe. But in terms of historical context for the last, you know, maybe 100 years in America, we've definitely gone downhill with a lot of people turning away from God. And in my previous videos, I kind of explained the, um, you know, downslide of America because of, especially with the JFK files coming out, and a lot of people had such hope and faith riding on those documents coming out to get some sort of, closure for, most people weren't even alive or involved in that event during that time. Um, they're looking for closure and they're looking for hope that they will get answers and they will, somehow that type of closure will help them resolve some issues in their lives or be transformed in some way. And what I've noticed is a lot of the um, a lot of the people on the out there in the world, but who are prevalent on the internet, it's so caught up in conspiracy theories, and they have actually kind of let that become their god. And it's not just conspiracy theories; it's conservatism, liberalism, science, and so many other things that we have made all these false idols in our lives. We have made so many things that we worship, even if we're not aware of it, unintentionally worshiping them, that we're putting our faith in those things, and we're hoping that we can find peace in whatever it is that we're involved in. But what we're not realizing is that we're actually creating false idols, and we're putting these things above God and our relationship with Him. But what I do see is a lot of people are getting to, the end in their journey for those things and hitting brick walls. And it's causing them to turn to, you know, seek God in some way, some fashion. Some people will seek him through, whatever religion they're into, whether it be Islam or Judaism or, Hinduism or whatever. But for the ones that are seeking on the path to, find the true God, the God of the Bible, they are, you know, working towards becoming Christians. They are trying to figure out how do they um, have that relationship with God and through His Son Christ, who is spoken about in the Bible, who they've grown up learning about in Sunday school, and many other things. And it's hard for a lot of people to comprehend. It's hard for a lot of people to get to that point where they can have that relationship with God because they can't even understand how to get there. A lot of it seems metaphysical to them and spiritual, and it's easy to be confused. It's easy to understand how some people fall into, you know, cultic things or different religions, false teachings, even cults themselves, or just kind of give up on it altogether and say there is no God. So today I kind of want to take a little bit of a dive into um, practical ways to get to the point of becoming a Christian. And I'm going to break down exactly why I'm, making this case. And I think it's important because of one of the reasons. that God has tasked us with as being Christians. So we're going to take a look at that today, and we're going to take a look at some Bible passages that back up some of the stuff that I'm talking about today. And if there's anything that you disagree with, or you want to add to what I'm saying, or you have your own opinion or take, feel free to put it in the comment section. This is an open discussion. It's just not just me, talking to you, the audience, saying that this is the way it is, and that's it. This is just my take on things, my understanding from life, and being a Christian myself. So if you have any other input to add, feel free to do it. I would love to have a conversation about it, and hopefully in the comments we can all, speak about it and edify each other, or add to the conversation and expand on some of these ideas, or even figure out new ideas. But this is what I've come up with as to practical ways to becoming a Christian. So first, I want to start off by explaining to those of you who may not be Christians, the whole concept of Jesus, because I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand. They look at Jesus as just another deity, another person who was a sort of like a superhero, where he performed miracles, he died and came back to life. It's the uh, type of stuff that you would see in a movie, or even in like a Marvel movie with a character that dies and comes back and all that stuff. Um, it seems made up, and that's understandable because there's a lot of deception out there, and there's a lot of different religions that they offer similar things, or they offer their own ideas that sort of maybe seem similar or parallel to this. But it's very straightforward. It's very simple. So if you start from the beginning, and I've talked about this in the past in previous videos, but I kind of want to put it all together now. So if you look back to the beginning with Adam and Eve, you have Adam and Eve, who were the first two people created by God, which, by the way, on a side note, I believe I read something recently where scientists have discovered that it's likely that men and women both share a gene or chromosome that links back to one man and one woman from the beginning of time that we're all related to. So I don't know how true that is in terms of what the scientists have discovered and what their claim is, but I completely believe that to be true because of the story of Adam and Eve in the Bible, and how it makes sense that we would all evolve from two people. If those were the first two people in life and there were no other people, God created them, all subsequent generations would come from them. So we are likely all related, right? If you just look at the Bible and look at the creation of life. But if you go back to Adam and Eve, you can see that you had the devil, who was masquerading as the serpent in the Garden of Eden. He tempted Eve into sin by her eating the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And at first, I believe she didn't give into it, but then eventually she did. When she did, she fell from God. She was disconnected, cut off from him. And she eventually, on Satan's behalf, because he tried for Adam and couldn't do it, tempted Adam, her husband, to eat the fruit as well. And he fell from God. So now they were disconnected from God. They fell away from God. This created a fallen state that they were in. And since they were disconnected from God, they could no longer have the same relationship that they had with Him, where they could communicate with Him directly. They could still do this going forward, but it was different because God had to separate Himself from them because He was perfect and He did not have any sin in Him. So He could not, because He's holy, be connected to something that's unholy. So He had to separate Himself from them. They, by default, fell victim to the devil. They now became under his dominion. They became under his control. So now he was their ruler, but he didn't have total control over them where he could do whatever he wanted. He still had to go back to God and, make requests essentially. Um, but he had dominion over them because they were now under his rule. So this was basically the creation of sin. It was the beginning of the the sinful state that people were in. It opened up the door to um, sin for mankind, which leads to death. Since mankind was now disconnected from God, they no longer had a way back to Him, and they couldn't receive His grace and blessings. The only way they could is if they lived perfect lives and didn't sin, which you could see from some people in biblical times that predated Jesus, like Job and others, or they had to make sacrifices uh, to him in order for him to bestow grace upon them. But this was a continuing thing. They had to keep doing these things in order to continue to receive grace from him. So they sort of had to earn their grace and blessings from him by sacrificing something for him. So the rule or what covenant or whatever way you want to call it between God and Satan was now that he can continue to try and tempt mankind into sin. And if they fell victim to it, could go to God and request their souls. And if God so chose, he would have the right to take their lives. And because sin led to death, um, he could then bring them to hell and torment them for eternity. Now, this is seen throughout the Bible. You can read a lot of this in Revelation, but you can read it in other parts of the Bible as well, where there are some mentions of hell. I believe even Jesus spoke of hell himself. So you can see that hell is a real place. It's not just an idea. It's not just a separation from God. Some Christians will say that it's just a separation from God, and that's not the total truth. It is a truth, but it's not the total truth. The total truth is there is an actual place called hell that Satan and the demons live, and people can go there if God allows, and they will be tormented there. So some Christians don't like to preach that because they like to keep things very PG. They want to make everything about how God is the God of love, and there's no, you know, it's more like an idea that if you're bad, you know, you'll suffer in this life. But the truth is, there is an actual place of hell. And some churches will teach it, and some churches it'll be all fire and brimstone, where it's if you're bad, you're going to hell. I think it's important for churches to find a happy medium, to find a place where they can preach about the beauty and the joy and the love of God and from God, and contrast that with the evil and the destruction and everything from the devil, including hell. If they can find a balance to be able to explain to people that God is all love, but the devil is all evil, and you want to stay with God so that you can avoid the devil, I think that that would be a lot better than some of the churches today that kind of choose one side or the other, and their parishioners, um, you know, get stuck in one mindset. I think it's good to balance both. So the idea was that if you never sinned, you wouldn't die. And because sin led to death, if you didn't sin, if you avoided sin, you wouldn't die. And that's why a lot of times we see in the Bible that people lived a lot longer back then. I'm sure a lot of it had to do with health as well. I'm sure a lot of it had to do with the earth being at its prime, everything being the most potent, all the food was the best. The air that people breathed back then was probably a lot cleaner, less pollution. But I think a lot of it is too that they went long stretches of time without sinning because it was very hard for the devil to tempt them. And the ones that did, oftentimes maybe, died early or quickly. But many people lived for hundreds of years in the Bible. If you look at, go back and look at some of the, ages of how long some of these people lived. And I think a lot of that had to do with them not sinning. So it made it hard for the devil to be able to take their lives. So the devil would make repeated attempts to go back to God and say, you know, I tempted this person to sin. They fell for it. I want their lives. Oftentimes, I'm sure God would say no. Um, but every once in a while, he would, say, yes, I've tried everything I could do to get this person to, love me and accept me. But ultimately, they have free will. I've tried to bring them back on the, straight and narrow path, but they refuse to, obey me and follow my commands. So, yes, you can take their lives. And that's where you see a lot of people, die and go to hell. But once Jesus came, he changed all of this. So you can think about this in very practical sense. You could sort of look at it like a contract, right, between two parties. Jesus was a perfect man that lived his life perfectly. He never sinned, and he went his entire life, 33 years, without sinning. Satan tried many times to um, tempt Jesus into sinning. He tried in many different ways to tempt him into many different types of sins, but Jesus never took the bait. So he remained pure. So after trying for a long time, he knew that he wasn't going to break him. He knew that he had no power over him, and I'm sure it angered the devil. So he decided, if I can't, get you to bend to my will and sin so I can take your life, I'm just going to take it anyway. It's almost like he got frustrated and just gave up. He couldn't do it anymore. So he killed Jesus. He had the, Jews and the Romans work together to, kill and crucify Jesus. The problem with this was that it was an unrighteous killing. So it actually broke the contract that he had with God, right? Not saying they actually had a covenant, but this is just a way to simplify it to make people understand, bringing it to like a perspective from reality of the things that we sort of experience in this life that we're familiar with, especially if you're not a Christian. You're not really going to understand the spiritual side of it. But he broke the contract because God gave him the right to take people's lives uh, through death if they sinned. That was the door, that was the gateway that opened them to that possibility of death. Since Jesus had never sinned, that door was never opened. So Satan acted on his own accord, and he decided to do something that he wanted to do. He broke the contract with God by doing, what he did. It was almost like there was a clause that said, if anybody is ever killed or taken without my approval, especially if they've never sinned, um, this will void out the entire contract. Like sometimes they have clauses like that in actual contracts where it's a clause that's like, if this happens, the entire contract is null and void. So um, this seems like that was the case here. He broke the contract. He took an innocent man and he killed him unrighteously, and ultimately it voided out the entire contract. So what happened was then Jesus, in that moment, absolved everybody of their sin because the devil had broken and voided the contract with God. He was able to write a new contract with new terms, and he took everybody's sin, past, present, and future, and absolved everybody of all their sin so that they could be saved through him. So when God wrote the new contract, he set everybody free from their sin, and Jesus allowed us to reconnect with God because he's still holy. So he couldn't connect with people who were unholy. But Jesus acted as the bridge because Jesus was holy in what he did. And he lived as a man and went through all the trials and tribulations of mankind on earth, same temptations from Satan and everything. But he never broke. So he basically operated as a bridge between us to God that reconnects us to God through Christ. Um, Even though we're still unworthy, Jesus is worthy. So he, on our behalf, just like he took all the sin from us, he, on our behalf, reconnects us to God and allows us to be able to communicate with him again. He also got rid of the sacrifices. He paid the price with one final sacrifice and put an end to sacrifices so that people no longer had to earn their way to God's grace and blessings. So what he did basically was like one last sacrifice that ended all future sacrifices. That's why we don't follow the old ways of the Old Testament with people sacrificing, things like animals or whatever to God in order to earn his blessings. And you'll hear a lot of Christians say this where we don't make sacrifices to God anymore because Jesus made the ultimate sacrifice and that's it, we're saved. Once saved, always saved. Now there are some Christians that don't believe that, but there is some more that goes to that. It's not just you're saved because Jesus took your sins. In order for the contract to apply to each person, they have to do a few things. They have to acknowledge that they, you know, were sinners and acknowledge that the contract even existed, right? Acknowledge that everything that was in place before was in place. And you have to repent for your sins. So you have to actually um, apologize to God essentially um, for the sins that you did commit and acknowledge that Jesus is the Messiah who took all those sins from us so that we could be saved. So acknowledge, repent. So acknowledge, repent, and recognize. Basically, acknowledge that everything, you know, exists the way it did. Acknowledge that you are a sinner. Acknowledge that all this existed, repent for your sins, and then recognize that Jesus is the Messiah who actually paid that ultimate price. Because if you don't do all those things, then it almost makes what he did um, irrelevant or as though it didn't even exist, right? You see, if we don't agree to the rules of the contract, then it has no power over us. It's like when two people, get together and make a contract in real life. Let's say two businesses decide to, work together and they put a contract together. The only thing that keeps them from breaking the contract is that they decide to stick to the terms of the contract. They agree to continue to stick to them. Now, they could break it and suffer consequences, but nothing can stop them from breaking it if they don't choose to adhere to the terms of the contract. So both parties have to agree to adhere to the terms of the contract. That's what makes the contract actually stand, actually hold firm. It has nothing to do with the punishment of it has nothing to do with the punishment of breaking the contract. It's the initial contract wouldn't even exist and be in place if both parties didn't acknowledge that it existed, right? It's the same thing with Christ. If we don't acknowledge what he did, then the contract doesn't apply to us and we're not Christians and we're not saved. But if we do acknowledge it and we repent and do everything I said, then we are accepting the terms of the contract and are now written into the contract as one of the parties, right? That's sort of how it's broken down in a way where hopefully the average person can understand. It's, as simple as a contract between, two or more parties where everybody agrees on the terms. And that's really what it comes down to. So when you choose Christ, you're making an agreement that you recognize he's the Messiah and he did what he did. Once you do that, you're saved. You are now adopted into the family of God. And, hopefully that's the easiest and simplest way to explain it to somebody who doesn't understand the spiritual or metaphysical side of it. But after that, you're saved. Now, like I said, there's some people that don't believe you're always saved. Some people do believe you're always saved. I personally believe you're always saved. But there's a caveat, and it's not really a caveat. It's part of the terms of the contract. You can't go back to sinning and living a life of a heathen or an immoral person and just call yourself a Christian. You have to actually you have to actually live out the life of a Christian. Now, you could stumble along the way, you can make mistakes, you could, fall off the path and get back on. You'll still be a Christian. Um, but if you think you can just cheat God and continue to live your old life before you were a Christian, um, you're not acknowledging that Christ did what he did. So you're not doing one of the first things I said that you have to do in order to be saved. So it goes hand in hand. You do have to live a life where you get away from your sin and you go on the new path that God laid out for you of being a Christian. You have to let your old life die and move on to your new life. But if you truly accept this, God will change your heart too. It's not just a mental thing. It's not just thinking. In your mind that Jesus is the Messiah and that he did what he did. He will change your heart too, so that you see it from a spiritual aspect, and fill you with the Holy Spirit so that you truly understand it and comprehend it at a core level. But in the beginning, you have to make that conscious acknowledgement. Now, this could be a journey for some people. Some people, it could be instantaneous. It could be their heart is changed immediately and they're saved and they don't even need to think about it. It's just something they felt and they know in their heart to be true. And this has happened to many people. They've given their testimonies in life and, that was their journey. Some people it's harder. Some people it's longer. Some people it's a long drawn out journey where they acknowledge everything I said, they repent, and then they try to get on the path. But it's hard because they're stuck in their own lives. They're stuck in their original lives that they were living before they became a Christian. And the good thing is God meets everybody where they're at. he meets them where they at, and he helps them go from that place to being a Christian, and living a Christ-like life. So as long as you don't go back to your old ways and you don't, avoid sin and temptation that leads to sin, you will remain a Christian. And in my opinion, and in what I've read from the Bible, you will remain a Christian and you will stay a Christian, and you will be once a Christian, always a Christian. So now that we've established all of that Jesus is the Messiah, that he came and, reconnected us back to God, he's the bridge, and that he is the pathway for us being saved and truly, born again and adopted into God's family, and, basically uh, sets us on the path to being a Christian. Um, we're going to talk about some ways to actually get there that's practical that you can apply to your life today, because a lot of people, they just can't comprehend how you can go from, living, like I said, an immoral life. Maybe you're the type of person that, is a drug addict, uses drugs heavily, abuses your body. Maybe you're the type of person that is extremely promiscuous. You're living a dark life of going to nightclubs and hooking up with random people, having one night stands, so many things like that, or you watch pornography, or you're a person who suffers from, any other sin or unrighteous way of living life. How you can go from that and then all of a sudden be a Christian, and now what? You're going to be in the church the next week, singing in the choir, and part of the worship team that goes on mission trips. That's not a reality for many people. Many people that seems too far-fetched, or it seems like too difficult of a journey to get from that point to being a Christian. And so sometimes they feel that, you know, they'll they're just not even going to attempt to try. And what I want to hopefully do now is explain to people that there is a pathway to get to those things. There is a pathway to set yourself up, and do small practical things, take small steps every day toward your goal of being a Christian. Because that's what it can be too. It can be a goal. It can be a goal that you set milestones along the way to help you get there. And if you live a righteous life, by default, you will fall into being a Christian. It will lead you there. Now, living a life where you don't do anything wrong, you don't sin, things like that, is not what saves you. Christ saves you for what he had done already, what he did. But that stuff can actually set you on a path to living as a Christian, living a Christ-like life, and getting there without having to take such a big leap. Like I said, for some people it's different. For some people, they wake up, they had a religious experience, and all of a sudden they're saved, and every bad habit in their life just goes away, and they're a new person. But that's not everybody's experience. So there are practical ways to get there, to, get all the bad sins and temptations out of your life so that you could be a Christian and you could live a good, pure life, but still have a nice life. For some people too, they avoid it because they believe that being a Christian means that you have to give up all your fun and all your joys in life and, live this really sorrowful life like a nun or a priest where you have to be miserable and you have to you know live with no excitement, no adventure, nothing entertaining or fun in your life, and just live a very strict life as a Christian in order to be saved, or you're going to hell. That's not the case. you know um God is the God of love. He's the God of joy. He's the God of peace. These are all positive things. He's not a miserable God that, sits up on his throne and looks down on everybody waiting for them to do bad things and then punishes them if they do. He's the God of love. He's the God of joy. He's the God of peace. He's the God of, you know, uh, fun and excitement, but in good moral ways. And a lot of people think that you have to, live this boring Christian life. But the truth is, being a Christian is actually the best life. It's wonderful. It makes you really appreciate life better. It makes you like people more. It actually makes you tolerate people more. Sometimes it can be difficult because there's, many of us, and everybody has different personality types. So, it can be hard for us sometimes to um, see the humanity and the joy in each other and appreciate each other, even strangers. But there's a reason that, two of the most important things to God that He makes sure that His people know are that we are not supposed to put any other gods before Him, but also we're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves. And there's two things to that. Number one is that, like I said, being a Christian actually restores your acceptance of other people, your tolerance for other people, and also your love for other people, your joy that you can, have with other people. It allows you to connect with people better and on a more pure level where you don't have an agenda and you're not, you know, using them or only like them if they're good to you, and if they're not, then you hate them. But also, a lot of people, that's hard for them because they don't love themselves and they don't treat themselves well. So when they treat their neighbor like they treat themselves, some people think that they're treating you, you feel that you're being treated wrongly by someone. You feel that you're being treated bad by someone. But the truth is, a lot of times if you look at people, look at the way they treat themselves, they're actually just treating you the way they treat themselves. So in their mind, subconsciously, they're probably just thinking, I am treating my neighbor as myself, but I don't like myself. So I'm treating my neighbor as though I don't like them. And that's all tied into this. If you if you break the bad habits in your life, if you break the sin, the temptations, you will become a better person. You will treat yourself better, and then you will treat your neighbor better, and then you will treat your neighbor better, and we will all live better lives. That's really a lot of what's going on in America, especially today, but the world too, is that everybody's so divided because there are so many people that hate other people, and a lot of it has to do with them not having God in their lives. And that's really what this comes down to at the core of it is people who believe in God, have a relationship with God, and are on the side of good. And then there's people who are evil and they're on the side of evil, even if they don't know it. But I want you to know that you can live a great life, have a lot of fun, have adventure, have joy, have peace, have excitement. You can still have all these positive things and be a Christian. Many people today, they suffer from a lot of different things. We have people who suffer from trauma from their past, their childhood, whatever, bad experiences. We have people who have anxiety, who have anger, depression, fear. And so a lot of times we fall into sin because we have those things. And so we look for outlets to deal with or cope with those things. And we end up accepting the temptations that lead us to the sins as an escape from those things in our lives. But the truth is, you're only making the problem worse. If you would do everything you could to avoid sin, those other problems would go away. You would have much easier time dealing with those things, dealing with your traumas, dealing with your anxiety. It's like people who try to drink their problems away with alcohol. It never has once cured anybody in the world from their problem. It only created new problems like alcoholism or, you know, uh, failure of their liver cirrhosis, things like that. It's never solved a problem, emotional or physical. The best way to deal with those things is to actually avoid the temptations that lead to sin. And we're going to talk about it now, how to do some of that. And a good question to ask yourself, at least one good question to ask yourself to see if this is how you're living is, do you ever feel like your life is always going wrong, or there's always something that happens in a negative way, where you feel as though things are happening to you rather than for you in a positive way? This is a good sign that you're, maybe not a Christian, or you're not living a righteous, good life where God is blessing you and, you know, adding unto your life. If your life always feels like a struggle, then that should be a sign that you're doing something wrong. And it usually has to do with the lack of God in your life, but it could also have to do with the decisions and the choices that you're making in your life that are continuing to make your life difficult and make you have these problems. So first thing you want to do, because I think it's good to give like a step-by-step process. It's not perfect, and if some things work for you, some things don't, that's fine. Do whatever works best for you. All I say is just be open-minded, try some of these things, see if it works for you. Whatever works for you, do that, and that's it. That's all I can really, offer you. But the first thing I would do is I would identify the things that God says are sins or unrighteousnesses, and so that you can see them in your life. So we'll jump into the Bible now. We'll take a look at some of these things in some of the different, books of the Bible and see what God has to say and see if you can identify these things in your life. So first thing that's best to do, I think, is to take a look at the Ten Commandments. Take a look at the most important things that God says we have to live by and see how many of these things you're not living by. Now, a lot of people just assume if they don't murder or steal that they're following the Ten Commandments. I think that's where we are today as a culture, where as long as you don't kill anybody, you're not a bad person and you're going to heaven. But that's not the reality. God gives a list of things that He says are important to him that we adhere to them. So let's take a look at these now. Everybody always knows, talks about the Ten Commandments, and we know them from, just life in general, growing up. Maybe if you went to Sunday school or grew up in a religious home, you would know the Ten Commandments, but I think a lot of people today don't actually know all 10. A lot of people today just know, like I said, one or two that sound familiar, and they just kind of assume that they're following all of them. So what we're taking a look at here is Exodus 20. This is the New International Version on BibleGateway.com, but you can look at whatever version works best for you in whatever Bible. This one's just easy to read. I don't even read this version. I read the New King James Version or the Geneva Bible, but not everybody likes that type of um, language. It's a little bit difficult for some people to read. So, a New International Version is a good one. It's nice and clean. But it says right there, God spoke these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. Now that's first commandment. We all know that one. That's very popular. It's also one of the most broken commandments today. Many people put many things before God. It's not just worshiping other gods. It's not just worshiping like Egyptians worship like, mythical gods or Greeks and the Romans. It's making anything or anyone more important to you than God. That is putting another God before God. You're making, if you have to choose between God and anything else in your life, and you can think of something that comes before God, that's your God. And you're putting that before God. So that is putting another God before God, which would be breaking the first commandment. Shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven, above, or on the earth, beneath, or in the waters below. And then it goes all into that. But that's basically um, the idea of that, is basically the idea of making an image of God. Now, I think a lot of people um, have mixed opinions on this. Some people say that's why you shouldn't wear, a cross or, um, sometimes you'll have like a little pendant where it's like a representation of Jesus or his face or his body hanging on the cross. And you'll see this sometimes in churches, you'll see it sometimes on jewelry. And there's debate about that. That's not really um, definitive that every Christian denomination agrees on what that is. But it doesn't say specifically name Jesus as Christ or the Messiah, in case they didn't want to say who, would be the Messiah. It specifically says God, which I take to mean the God in heaven, not who we know as Christians and Catholics as God, the man Jesus who walked the earth. And I have yet to see anybody really do a depiction of God, but that would be hard because you'd have to have seen him first. Um, People make representations of God what they believe and things like that, but you don't really see people um, walking around with merchandise of God because it's kind of hard to create an image of God that you have not physically seen with your own two eyes. But that's one that is sort of up for some debate today. You shall not misuse the Lord. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will hold, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. So we all know that as don't use the Lord's name in vain, right? People do that all the time, right? How many times do people say GODDAM? And, even if it's, they're mad at somebody or if it's as simple as like they stubbed their toe, you know, we do that all the time. So, um, people often, break that as well. Um, but I think really more what it means is lying about God and lying on God. Really is what I think God was getting at here was that you're falsely representing God. Keep this one is remember the Sabbath and keep that day holy. Now, there's some debate again about this in certain denominations of Christianity that the Sabbath is no longer needed to be kept holy because, even when Jesus was asked about it, he explained that you were able to do some things on the Sabbath and that some people took that as it doesn't need to be recognized as a holy day where you absolutely do nothing and just worship God all day. Um, but again, there's debate about that. But if you're the type of person that wants to keep the Sabbath holy, and regardless of whether you believe that's Saturday that we celebrate today or Sunday, because the days of the week are different now than they were in the past. Um, Either way, if it can't hurt you to keep one day of the week holy and sacred for God and make that day about God. So, there's no benefit, there's no negative to um, keeping that at least one day a week holy for God. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. This is one that I think is probably very easily broken today. Now, honor your mother and father doesn't say and doesn't mean obey them, do everything they say, worship them, and treat them like your God. And I think that's the trap that a lot of people fall into today is that they think that honor your parents means you have to do everything they say when you're an adult. When you're a kid, you do, but when you're an adult, um, and if you don't worship them and treat them like they're so important um that you're somehow not honoring them. Like there's a lot of people who let their mothers or their fathers have so much control over them and it ruins their lives, and I think some of them believe that they're if they were to disobey them they would be dishonoring them. But honor could mean be a good representation of God through Christ would be an honor to your parents because it shows that they raised you the right way. And even if they didn't, you, their child, would be a beautiful representation of not only God, but your parents to the world and an example that others can follow. That is honoring. That is a way to honor your parents by living a good, righteous life as a Christian. You shall not murder. Now, this is the one that people always think about. They get hung up on. Well, as long as I don't murder anybody, I'm a good person, I'm a Christian, and I'm going to heaven. What about the other ones that were mentioned here? You shall not commit adultery. This is one that I think is probably broken so much today. Now, adultery, for people who don't understand, is any sex outside of marriage at all. It doesn't matter if you're not married and have never been married. Just because you are not married and not cheating on your spouse doesn't mean you're not committing adultery. Adultery is any intimate relations outside of marriage. So if you're, dating, you're young, you know, uh, culture in the world today has convinced the youth that they should be going out in the world and dating as much as possible and having as much sex with as many people as they can to find out which partner they like the best, a lot of times just focused on in bed. And then that's the one that you marry. That is the absolute wrong advice, and it's completely unbiblical, and it is not anything that God would approve of. You're supposed to wait till marriage to have sex, and you're supposed to grow in your uh, relationship with your spouse. So no one's ever gotten married and had bad sex with their spouse, and then that was it for the rest of their lives. Sex was horrible and they hated it. It's not reality. You grow with your spouse. You grow in every area of your life, not just as a couple and not just as people and as parents and as everything else, but you can also grow and evolve with your intimate relationship as well. You can enjoy each other and learn more how to have better intimate relationships, intimate relations with each other over the course of your marriage. That's part of the beauty of the marriage is that you get to grow together over time and get better at everything in the relationship. So this is a big one that it's culturally accepted today to commit adultery. It's not only is it something that is a sin where people are, breaking it and it's like, oh, well, yeah, we're sorry. People today aren't even sorry. People go as far as bragging in public, putting it on camera, putting it on TikTok and Instagram and all these places about how many people they had sex with outside of marriage, or even if they are married. It's a it's a commandment that people openly break today. So this is a big one that I think most people um, don't either care or don't realize that that is an essential part of being a Christian. Some people believe that you can become a Christian and you could still mess around with this one. Like, well, I'm a Christian now. I'm saved. She's a Christian. She's saved. We're both going to church together and we plan on getting married, but we're not yet. So we're going to continue to just, have sex and at least we're getting there. At least we're getting to the point where we will be married and we already are Christians. You're not. If you're breaking this commandment, you're not, God is not recognizing you as true Christians. You have to wait till marriage and do it the right way. So any Christian that tells you that you can have sex outside of marriage and still be a Christian is lying to you. You shall not steal. Now, this is it could mean many different things. It doesn't just have to mean items. It could mean many different things. It could be, you know, stealing someone's, it could mean many different things, but for the most part, we understand it as do not steal, do not take something that does not belong to you. That might not just mean a physical item. It could mean anything, but it could mean someone's time. It could mean their energy. It could mean their attention. It could mean their um, you know, anything really. But if you're purposely taking something from someone, you are stealing. So be mindful of that. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Now we all know this one. This is another one. Lying. That's really what that comes down to is don't lie. Don't lie. And so many people lie today. It's just common. It's just an everyday occurrence where they just blatantly lie. And this is another thing that people will convince you is okay. Well, it wasn't a bad lie. It was just a little white lie. Well, it doesn't really matter what you think it is, how you categorize it. A lie is a lie. And it's something that God says we should not do. You're breaking a commandment. Now, I understand that it also says in the Bible there's a time for everything. And so sometimes God may put it on your heart to lie in that moment. If your life is in jeopardy and you have to lie to get out of a situation to live, maybe that's God's will for you. So I'm not saying it's always wrong, but if you're consciously aware that you're lying for a reason other than God put it on your heart, then you are lying and you are breaking a commandment. And we know the rest of these. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife um, or his male or female servants, or anything else it says in there. Some of that stuff doesn't apply today, but some of it does. Basically, it means you can't take things from anybody else that don't belong to you. So we all know these Ten Commandments, and you especially do now after reading them. Read them more on your own time. You can print them out, put them in your presence every day so that you can look at them or remind yourself of them. But they're in the Bible. Now let's take a look at some other things that are lesser talked about because the Ten Commandments kind of eclipses everything else, and people put their focus and attention on as long as I follow the Ten Commandments, I'm a good person and I'm doing the right thing and I'm a Christian and I'm going to heaven. There are other things in the Bible that God talks about that He says are things that are either sins or unrighteousnesses that we should be avoiding in order to live a Christ-like life. So this is Proverbs 6:16 to 19. There are six things that the Lord hates, seven that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. Now, we know most of those, some of them correlate to the Ten Commandments. But what I want to take a look at is the last one in particular, because I think this is an important one. A person who stirs up conflict in the community. This is a person who intentionally um, tries to create problems for people. We all know people like this. And this could be as simple as gossiping, as somebody just talking about somebody else behind their back, and then that getting back to the person and it creating all these, rumors and things like that. That's the same thing. And I find it interesting because I've seen many people who had testimonies where they claim that they have died and gone to either heaven or hell. And the ones that claim they've gone to hell have spoken about the different levels of hell. And, there's maybe one area for murderers who kill people, another area for thieves who steal things. But many of them have mentioned, and these people don't even know each other, but they've corroborated similar stories that there is a place in hell for people who gossip, for people who, you know, talk badly about other people or create problems between people on purpose. There is allegedly an actual place in hell for people who do this. So we don't really think about gossip or, causing problems for other people intentionally, maliciously, as being something that is a sin or an unrighteousness. But here it says these are things that the Lord hates. And as we know, that anything that the Lord hates is an abomination. It's something that is really bad. So keep that in mind the next time you try and gossip. I always try to explain to people that gossiping is not good. It doesn't do you or the other person any good. All it is like a temporary release because it makes you feel good that you're talking bad about somebody, and it makes you maybe even feel a little bit better about yourself. Or maybe if that's a person you don't like, it makes you feel good that you're able to hurt them even if they don't know you're hurting them. It's almost like voodoo, like you're putting a needle into a doll and hoping that that person feels the pain. It's it's not beneficial to anyone. So there's no reason to do it. Do anything you can to avoid gossip in your life. Also, it programs your brain, your mind, to think about things from a negative connotation. You got to get rid of that stuff in your life. You got to get into a positive mindset where you're filled with joy and peace and love, and your focus is on positive things and ways that you can better your life, your family's lives, and your neighbor, people around you, or people in your community or whatever. Spend your time constructively trying to help better the world, not make it a worse place. And gossip is one of the easiest um, gateway drugs to making the world a worse place. But this is the last thing that I want to actually show you in the Bible. That, but this is the last thing that I want to show you in the Bible. It actually talks about some lesser spoken about things that I think are important that people follow and that they try to avoid these things at all costs because a lot of this stuff is sin, and there's so many temptations to these things in our lives that we need to avoid, and they're not spoken about a lot, or if they are, they're actually promoted in our culture as being good or being stuff that is really not that big of a deal that God doesn't care about. But you could see here in Galatians 5:19 through 21. But you could see here in Galatians 5:19 through 21, and this is also spoken about in other books of the Bible, like Corinthians, the acts of the flesh are obvious, which, as we know, they're talking about, temptations and sin, sexual immorality, which we spoke about, impurity and debauchery, which we also spoke about, idolatry and witchcraft. That's another important thing that I want people to understand. That's actually in the Bible. God is against witchcraft. Now, in the past, we know about witchcraft as being like the Salem witch trials and the uh, crazy, super religious Puritans thought everybody was a witch, and so they just killed all the people that just blamed for being witches because they you know were dumb and didn't really understand what was going on, or modern science and discoveries that they didn't know of yet. That's not the case. These people were actively practicing witchcraft, and it's still carried on today, except it's much, much more prevalent today, and it's a lot of it's hidden in plain sight. I did a video on this in the past, a few videos back, which was a great video that actually showed you um, metaphysical and mystical shops in your area. You can literally go on Google Maps, look in any neighborhood, any major city or big town where there are a lot of retail businesses, and you could likely find at least one mystical shop. These are places that sell crystals, tarot cards, a lot of things of the occult. And there's a push in the culture today, not only for communism, but to actually get people into the occult and make it mainstream as though it's fun and exciting. And this is not new. This has been since the beginning of time. The devil's always tried to do this. But it's clear as day in the Bible, God is against witchcraft or anything of the occult. And there are so many people that practice things of the occult today, especially with the New Age movement, and then some young influencers on social media will actually brag about how they're practicing some of this stuff or they're trying it out and they think it's just some cool trend that they're doing for a video. But the truth is they're actually engaging in the works of the devil. And this is something that God says is an abomination and that it's sin, it's bad, and it will lead you to hell. But there are people who actually partake in it even today. But hatred, so that's another big one, right? Hating people. Hating people is not just something that you shouldn't do. It's a sin. It's bad. Um, discord, jealousy, that's envy. Fits of rage, that's anger. Selfish ambition, doing things for yourself with yourself in mind at the core and not God at in the core, and not God at your core. Dissension, factions, and envy, which also is jealousy. Drunkenness. See, a lot of people will try and make, the claim that, oh, it's okay to drink because, Jesus drank wine and he turned the water into wine. There's nothing wrong with having a drink or two every once in a while to enjoy yourself. There is something wrong with being drunk. And that's what a lot of people do today. Again, this is a big cultural thing that people, partake in today. We literally have buildings established where people go to just drink alcohol. Those are bars. They serve alcohol and that's it. People go there just to drink, and majority of the people who go there and drink get drunk. It's become a socially acceptable thing to be drunk, but it's clear as day. It's in the Bible. Drunkenness is something that is bad. Here's another big one, orgies. Again, it's not just sexual immorality. They separated it. Sexual immorality is a range of things, but orgies is specific. It's having sexual relationships with multiple partners at the same time. That is an abomination to God. But there are people that brag about how they had a threesome or they did this weird, experience with a couple different people, and it's all bad. So you cannot be a Christian and partake in these things. It says, I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. Clear as day. If you do these things, you will not be a Christian and you will not be saved. So I'll wrap it up with basically how do you go from, living this type of lifestyle. I guarantee there were many of you that seen this, that as we read those things from the Bible, you are guilty of many of those things, or many of those things are part of your lifestyle every day. And you might not even thought that they're wrong, but they are. And so what I hope to, explain now is just to give you like basic steps to sort of get out of those things and into um, living a full Christian lifestyle if that's what you are seeking. everybody's going to be on their own path. God will meet you where you're at, like I said, but you could take small steps every day. So let's just, some people need to hit rock bottom in order to, go through a religious experience and a transformation and become a Christian. But for some of you, you could just implement these simple steps in your life and take daily action. So that now that we've identified all these things from the Bible, the next step is to avoid all the temptations in your life. Actively take steps to avoid all the temptations in your life that lead to these sins. If you get rid of all the temptations you possibly can in your life, doesn't mean the devil won't try and throw you a curveball every now and then, but if you get rid of all these temptations, you will likely not sin or sin less. And the gist of it is simple. If you just do the opposite of all these things and live your life opposite of everything that I just read, you'll live a sin-free life, right? It's easy to understand, but it's hard to implement that in your life if you just try and, you know, avoid all these things. And so let's just take a few of them, and there are more in the Bible that we didn't discuss because I don't want the video to be too long. But the basic ones that we know and some of them that we've read: anger, gluttony, sloth, envy, or jealousy. These are things that are, clearly things that God does not like that many people suffer from today. So just take an easy one like gluttony, which a lot of people think it means just eating too much food. It actually means consuming too much of anything. And many people suffer from that today, besides the fact that America has an obesity epidemic. And, now you have people like RFK on a national stage at the highest governmental level. Um, Actively pursuing how to make the country healthy again because clearly we have such a epidemic of health in this country. There are many people that are gluttonous in many different areas of their life. They eat too much food, and it's part of the one of the downfalls of being such a prosperous nation is that we have so much prosperity and so much money that we're able to enjoy the luxuries of life. And one of the top luxuries that people enjoy is food. So if you're the type of person that eats a lot of food or you eat unhealthy food and you're overweight and you like to be healthier, but you'd also like to just, be less of a glutton because you don't want to live that type of sin out, um, take a simple step. Get rid of as much of the unhealthy foods that make you um, obese or binge eat, which is, gluttony. Um, Get rid of them from your life. Get them out of your home. If you have a cabinet full of snacks, donate all the snacks to charity, at least the ones that you didn't open. Donate them to charity and the rest throw them out or feed them to the wild animals. Um, get rid of these things out of your life so that you can avoid the temptation of falling into that sin, right? And then another layer is replacing one bad habit with a good habit. If you have a bunch of snacks that have, crap ingredients, um, an easy step might be just replacing them with better brands that have better ingredients and then less addictive chemicals so that maybe you won't eat as much, you won't desire to eat as much, and you'll naturally lose weight that way. Or replace it with healthier foods. If you have a, fridge full of delicious, snacks, instead put fruit in your fridge. Put a bunch of blueberries and raspberries and sweet tasting things that maybe if you're addicted to artificial sugar might not taste so good. But take that temptation out of your life. Put healthy stuff in your fridge so that if you are hungry and you're sitting down watching Netflix at night and you just want to eat a snack and you open the fridge or you open the cabinet and there's no other options but something healthy, you're either going to go hungry or you're going to end up eating that healthy thing. Now that'll start training your body to crave the healthy food, and then you won't crave the bad food as much anymore. And then over time, you will actually lose weight and eat less, and that'll solve the gluttony problem. You'll fall out of the sin of gluttony by getting rid of the temptations in your life. So anything that's causing you to be gluttonous, get it out of your life. Now, again, I said consuming too much of anything is gluttonous. If you're the type of person who drinks too much, best thing to do, get all the alcohol out of your house. Make it harder for you to partake in that sin. Make it more difficult for you to fall into that trap by getting the temptations out of your life. Get all the alcohol out of your house. Don't go to a bar anymore. If you're the type of person that can't control yourself, tell the bartender, I'm an alcoholic. Am having an issue here. Don't let me in your bar anymore. I know I'm a paying customer and that's how you make your money. But I'm really struggling here. If you can, help me out, if you know the person long enough, maybe they're a friend, maybe they'll actually, try and do their best to keep you out of there because it's what's best for you. Also join Alcoholics Anonymous or, join some sort of church group, like replace that bad habit with a good habit where you have to do an outreach to help people who are alcoholics overcome their alcoholism or maybe somebody with a different addiction so that it doesn't, interfere with you where maybe you end up both just getting drunk. Maybe help somebody who, is struggling with something that's a bigger problem than what you have so that you realize your problem's not so big, and then you're dedicating your time and energy to something positive. Um, this is a big one for people and, going to now switching over to, same thing with cigarettes and vaping. They offer no positive benefits to the human body. In fact, all they do is damage the body and end up killing us long term. Especially the vapes, it's actually worse than cigarettes. But there are so many people that smoke, right? But if you're the type of person that smokes a pack a day, what is that, 20 cigarettes, you that's a lot of cigarettes in a day. You don't have to quit cold turkey. Not everybody can do that. It's a difficult, journey for people. It's something that you have to have a lot of willpower to do. So if that's not you, it doesn't mean either quit cold turkey or just keep smoking. Cut down to 19 cigarettes a day, and then 18, and then 17, and over time, pace yourself down to where maybe you're only having one a day or one every other day, and then your body and your mind starts to realize actually you don't need this. You start to break the addiction naturally, and you can get that out of your life as well. And then, also too, like avoid temptation. Make it harder for yourself to buy cigarettes. If you if you always keep like, $20 or $30, whatever cigarettes cost today, I have no idea, cash, you know, in your home on your nightstand, and that's the money you use for your cigarettes, take that money, put it in the bank. If you have extra money in the bank and you know that you're gonna blow it on something stupid like that, invest it. Put it in something that you know that you can't touch as easily and something that will grow, so it's turning a negative habit into a positive habit. Because even if you lose the money, you're going to blow it on cigarettes anyway. But if you don't lose the money and it happens to grow, you just end up with more money, and that's a win-win, right? Um, now switching over to a big problem today, sexual immorality. Besides the cheating and the affairs and all the, crazy stuff that people are doing today, which is really not good for the soul, um, we have a massive problem with people watching pornography in the world today. And this is a big part of sexual immorality. There's a lot of people who struggle with it, but they don't take away the barrier to entry. They don't take away the temptation. Do everything you can. Do everything you can to take the temptations out of your life. So if you have to treat yourself like a child and put um, restrictions on all your computers and your devices in your home to block any of these pornography websites, do it. It's best for you. And also, if you ever have any children, your children or other children around, and obviously we don't want them to get into that content because now it takes an innocent person and opens them up to, something bad. This would be beneficial for not just you, but other people too. Blocking these things would make it harder for them to see it. But also, sometimes in life, we have to treat ourselves like children. It's the same thing as training wheels on a bike, right? If you're new and young in your faith, you may have to, um, you know, give yourself training wheels until you get to the point where you can ride that bike on your own. You may have to put bumpers up on the bowling lane until you learn how to keep the ball on the lane and hit the pins without falling in the gutter. So sometimes we're in our infancy in our faith and we have to do things, take extreme measures to put boundaries up. Boundaries are a good thing. It's an important thing that a lot of people don't do today. They just leave themselves open and not only leave themselves open to the world coming into their life, but leave themselves open to being tempted by everything that's out in the world. Do everything you can to avoid temptation and get rid of these things from your life. And, it might be difficult in the beginning, but if you take small steps, it actually gets easier over time. But, back to that point about pornography, make it harder for yourself. Make the barrier of entry to those websites harder. If you have to put all these restrictions up, great. There are even some apps now where it'll help you block certain apps on your phone or certain websites, and it'll make it harder for you to get on them. Like you have to put in a bunch of catchphrases and stuff like that, or a long passcode or solve a math problem. But it helps because by the time you finally, figure out how to do it, you decide, actually, I don't need to do it that bad anyway. So, do whatever you got to do to, take that temptation out of your life. And now, something as simple as sloth, right? Laziness. If you're the type of person that is not motivated to do much, maybe if you have a health issue, that's a separate thing. But if you're the type of person that loves watching TV and you watch 5, 6, 7 hours of TV a night and you're hanging out or playing video games or whatever, eliminate the temptation by taking away the barrier to entry. If it's as simple as you unplugging your TV so that you can't just click a remote and the TV turns on and you can search for what you want. If you're gonna have to get up and plug in the TV, maybe that's best because it makes you have to work a little bit harder, which, if you really want to do that thing, you're gonna have to work hard for it. And then when you do, you at least earned it. But even if you have to take the TV down, put it away, hide it under your bed or something. Make it difficult for yourself that every time you want to watch TV, you got to carry this heavy TV out, plug it in, set it up, get all your settings right. You may realize that you don't even want to that bad, or you're just too lazy to do it anyway, which would kind of help that problem. But also, again, replace it with a good habit. Maybe put a bunch of books around your home, and then every time you are desiring to go watch TV, and you know what a pain in the ass it is going to be to get that TV out and hook it back up, maybe you'll just pick up a book and open the book, and even if you stare at the words on the page, just that alone is better than sitting and mindlessly watching TV or playing video games or doing something that's a waste of your time and not beneficial to you, but only, having a negative impact on you. Do things that are going to benefit you. So this basically applies to anything we just, looked at in the Bible. Just follow these steps. Identify what these are, which we did. We looked in the Bible, and that you can do your own, research at home, or you can print them out and make them part of your daily life so that you could always look at them and reference them and be reminded of what they are. But then also actively take steps to remove these temptations from your life so that they don't lead you into sin, and then replace a lot of these bad habits with good habits. Those are the steps that I would recommend to, getting away from sin. And you'll see over time, if you actually practice this and put it into effect and do it every day, you will feel less tempted to sin uh, a lot more going forward. And this will help you find your way to a path of righteousness, that straight and narrow path. And here's the real key, right? Because even if you don't have a major religious experience and you're saved in that way, if you at least find your way back to the straight and narrow path that Christ is on and following in his footsteps to live a Christ-like life, if you at least find your way to that path, you're a lot more likely to run into him on the path than if you're not on the path at all, right? So if you at least get all these temptations and these sins out of your life, you're a lot more likely to actually become a Christian, become saved, become born again, and acknowledge and recognize what Jesus did for you. But you have to get these negative things out of your life first. We live in a world today where everything is instant gratification. People want things immediately. They want all their problems solved right away. They want to take a pill for their anxiety. They want to pray once and have God give them everything that they desire. They want to click a button and Amazon delivers their package in 40 seconds. And it's not only is it not a reality, it's actually bad for us. It's actually hurting us. We want to go from A to Z, but we forget that there's an entire alphabet in between those two letters. And that's actually a good thing. We live in instant gratification world, but delayed gratification is gratification earned. Remember that. If, you want to enjoy the things that life has to offer, you have to earn it. You have to earn the right to have those things. Now, we know that says in the Bible, being drunk is bad. But having an occasional drink is not a bad thing. You don't have to eliminate it from your life completely unless you're the type of person that can't control yourself. But if you earn that drink by doing good and not drinking really at all, and every once in a while you're at a party, a big celebration or something, you decide to have, a drink to, enjoy it, it will be earned. If you enjoy a nice, delicious meal and you love food, um, if you eat well, take care of yourself, diet, exercise, when you do finally go enjoy that you know big piece of cake or something with chocolate or whatever, that's obviously not good for you. Uh, you will have earned that, and then you also won't become a slave to it. It won't be your god, right? And you won't fall victim of the sin that comes from too much of that, or um, doing that thing on a recurring basis. You can enjoy certain things of life. You don't have to be miserable. You don't have to, live, like I said, this boring Christian life where everything stinks. You can have a lot of fun. Life can be great, but you got to get the temptations to the sins that you're currently living in out of your life. Then once you do that, you can see the joys in other things in life. You can live a great life and do a lot of fun things and have adventure and stuff, but these sins are holding you back. And some of them you're actually never going to be able to do again. You have to be okay with that. Some of them like sexual immorality. You can't have any of that in your life ever. If you're the type of person that, enjoys having many different partners, you're going to have to eventually learn how to break that. But when you find the right person and marry them, you can still have sex. You don't have to not have sex anymore. It's just going to be with the right person under God through His covenant and doing it the right way. It doesn't mean living like a monk in some mountain and you're by yourself forever, being abstinent. You can still enjoy those things. God created all those things, but He created them to be used and enjoyed the right way. But with that said, I hope you got value out of this video. I hope it's something that will help you if you're on that journey to try and become a Christian, but you just don't know where to begin. My recommendation, if you haven't had a major religious experience where you've had a coming to Christ moment, just start here. Just start by taking these steps, eliminating temptations out of your life, getting away from sin, and then finding positive, constructive things that you can add to your life, good habits, good hobbies that you can, find the joy in this life and enjoy being a Christian and actually getting to live a good life and do cool things and not uh, have to suffer um, the consequences of any of those sins or bad actions in your life. That's it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, share, all that good stuff. Everything's in the show notes, links in the bios. Definitely follow me on Rumble, YouTube, and Spotify, where I upload all the full podcast episodes. And you can follow me on X and Instagram, where we upload a lot of short clips and we do a whole bunch of other things. Um, don't forget to take a look at the little ending here with the ad. It's got my children's book, which is on sale right now. It's actually a great book to get for Easter. The Easter season's coming up. It makes a perfect gift for Easter if you do celebrate that and you want to get somebody who has a child in your life. A children's book. It's a wonderful children's book with a lot of great life lessons. So check that out. Little Boy Full of Love. Available on all the major platforms and in many bookstores. Don't forget to check out our Amazon storefront, bunch of things on sale right now, and our apparel shop, which percentage of profits go to charity. So that's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one. All right, everybody, I just want to take a moment to promote my children's book. This is Little Boy Full of Love. That's me on the back. And this is a little sneak peek on the inside. It's a great book. It's a children's book. I actually wrote this for my son, and it's available right now on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Indigo, Bookshop.org, and a lot of other online platforms. But more importantly to me, it's actually available in a lot of bookstores throughout the country. You can find out which ones are closest to you on my Instagram page. We highly recommend that you shop local, buy from a local bookstore. So if you are looking to, get a children's book for you or anybody you know, or even with the holidays coming up, it's a great time to, buy a children's book as a gift. Definitely get it from a bookstore that's local to you. But if you absolutely can't get it from one of the bookstores that are currently carrying it right now, and we're in about 15 or 16 different states across the country, so it may actually be in your state, and it could even be local to you. But if you can't get it from the physical bookstore, check out our Amazon storefront. The book's available on there right now. And like I said, with the holidays coming up, you may want to do your Christmas or Hanukkah or holiday shopping early, and you can even order it from our Amazon storefront and ship it directly to whoever you're gifting it to. But it's available on those platforms, Amazon storefront and bookstores and other websites that I mentioned. But I want to take a moment here to look at the storefront just to give you an idea of some other stuff that we have available on there. These are products that we highly recommend. They are things that we use in our daily lives, and it's all organized by category. So it's a lot easier to, shop for the holidays and specifically for things that interest you, particular categories. Available right now, many different items on our storefront. If you can see here, 61 items just in women's apparel, fall decor, because right now we're in fall, 26 items, kitchen items, baking specifically, things for around the house, children's toys, even stuff for parties. If you're trying to save money on a party and throwing your own, occasion, you can even buy some cool gadgets here to help you, put on a better party. Health and wellness items here, even stuff for Christmas. And there's the book right there. So you can get it from the storefront. You can get it from the bookstores, like I mentioned. But it's available on all these different platforms. It's really easy to find and gift to somebody. Also, I want to show you the apparel shop, and these are some clothing items that we actually produced. So if you're looking to get some cool apparel items, shirts, hoodies, long sleeve, short sleeve, leggings, even accessories, cell phone cases, women's makeup bags, fanny packs, coffee mugs, all different types of stuff, even some, art, all different categories here, apparel, homeware, accessories, drinks, even digital items. It's all on this store, healthybodygoodssoul.com. Anything that pertains to you or somebody that you're looking to get a gift for the holidays. A lot of great designs on here, a lot of cool designs that we actually custom created. Stainless steel water bottles, especially now with the fall and winter. A lot of cool hoodies and long sleeve shirts. This is a really cool one, I think, for women. The original Be Your Soul apparel, that one's actually really popular. People tend to like that. This one's one of my favorites. The free shirt. It's the American flag and it says free and that says not property of the United States government. That one's pretty cool. Got all different types of tank tops, hoodies, long sleeve, short sleeve, tote bags, coffee mugs, even some items for kids, backpacks. So if you're the type that likes to, plan ahead, I would definitely recommend ordering from the Amazon storefront or the apparel shop within the next couple of weeks to get everything in time for the holidays. Use code SAVE15 on the apparel shop to save 15% off everything on the storefront. So order within the next week or two and you'll definitely have everything in time for the holidays. Definitely check out all the links to everything, the Amazon storefront, the book, and the apparel shop in my bio on all my platforms, Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify. But you can also find them in all the show notes for every episode that I post and get all your orders in time for the holidays. All right, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. It helps the channel continue to grow. And put in the comments things that you would like me to talk about and make videos on for the future. And I will definitely do my best to do that. Stay tuned for the next one.